Hello everyone, and welcome to History of One Piece, where I chronicle, review, debate, and analyze the various arcs of One Piece. Last time I recapped the events of the Captain Morgan arc, so today I'm going to delve even further into the events that transpired. I have a lot to cover today, so let's get started, shall we? The Captain Morgan arc focuses on quite a few more characters than the Alvida arc. Where the Alvida arc served as an introduction to Luffy and Koby, the Morgan arc serves to flesh out these characters and introduce us to a few more. In addition to our two leads, the arc focuses on Captain Morgan, Helmeppo, Roronoa Zoro, and Rika, the girl who made the onigiri. While not all of them get a character arc, each character has a specific role to play, and all of them become important later down the line. Once again, Luffy remains static throughout the arc because he doesn't need to change just yet. We learn a lot about him from his actions and his interaction with the rest of the characters. The first major thing we learn here is that Luffy knows absolutely nothing about navigation. Before Luffy got in the whirlpool in the last arc, he was drifting around the ocean in a small boat, simply hoping he'd reach land soon. In episode 2, he lets Koby steer the boat, and is amazed that Koby can get them to the marine island. This may seem trivial until you consider the fact that Luffy wants to be a pirate captain. If he's going to sail to the Grand Line, he absolutely needs to find a navigator. He's never going to make it to the Grand Line if he keeps drifting around from place to place. While this problem isn't addressed in this arc, it is foreshadowed here very briefly, and should be remembered for later. When Luffy arrives at the town, he announces his arrival and his intention to visit the marine base. This further showcases how completely confident Luffy is. He's not subtle, and he doesn't hide the fact that he's a pirate because he doesn't feel he has to. He's not afraid of the Marines, and he has faith in his skills, so what's the point of hiding who he is? To him, it makes more sense to announce his presence, especially since he intends to be Pirate King someday. One thing to note here is that Luffy once again refuses to listen to Koby's warnings about Zoro. At the end of episode 1, Luffy stated that he wanted to see Zoro for himself before he could decide if Zoro was bad or not. In episode 2, Luffy repeats this statement almost word for word. This tells us two things about Luffy. First of all, once Luffy's mind is made up, it is impossible to change it. If he wants to go talk to Zoro, he's going to talk to Zoro, and Koby is not going to stop him. Second, Luffy doesn't judge people based on their reputation. He uses his own judgment, and only when he has seen the person for himself. These are two qualities that every pirate captain needs, especially pirates who are setting sail for the Grand Line. If Luffy was wishy-washy or easily swayed by other people, he wouldn't have the determination needed to become the Pirate King. When Luffy first sets eyes on Zoro, he immediately thinks of helping Zoro escape. Koby continues to protest, stating that Luffy is going to get himself killed, but Luffy just smiles and says that it's no problem because he's strong. This statement reinforces Luffy's confidence, but it also showcases once again that Luffy isn't afraid of anyone or anything. For the past 2 episodes, Zoro has been built up as an unstoppable demon, but Luffy just laughs this off. Another important thing to note is that when Helmeppo first appears, Koby is thankful that the Marines have arrived, and he turns to Luffy to confirm this notion, but Luffy doesn't answer him. From the look on Luffy's face, he can tell that Helmeppo is bad news. The thing is, Luffy has a knack for reading people. With just a look, he can easily form an opinion of a person, and his opinion is accurate 95% of the time. Now, you're probably wondering how Luffy is able to do this. Well, this ties back to his interaction with Koby in episode 1, and into something we won't learn until much later down the line. I'll get back to this later, but for now, just remember that Luffy is great at reading people. When Rika is thrown over the wall, Luffy immediately rushes to her aid. He doesn't think about it, and he doesn't hesitate. He simply saves her without a second thought. This is the first of many examples of Luffy's selflessness. Sure, Luffy can be selfish when he wants to be, but he always rushes to help those in need. After Helmeppo leaves, Luffy climbs over the wall and talks with Zoro for the first time. Now, I'm going to talk more about the scene later on in the overview, but this is some serious character development for Luffy. Throughout the entire scene, Luffy is testing Zoro. He wants to see if Zoro is worthy of being on his crew, and every sentence, every single line of dialogue is important.
お前悪いやつなんだってな。
The very first thing Luffy does is try to confirm whether or not the rumors about Zoro are true. However, Zoro doesn't answer Luffy's question.
てめえまだいたのか?
こんなとこで晒し者になって、お前本当に強いのか?
Because Zoro dodges Luffy's first question, he switches tactics and asks if Zoro is really as strong as they say. This question does a few things. First of all, this is a direct insult to Zoro. Luffy is trying to make Zoro mad to see how he reacts. Luffy needs a first mate who is cool-headed and able to deal with Luffy's zaniness. If Zoro reacted like the pirates on Alvida's ship, Luffy probably would have given up on Zoro that very second. Secondly, Luffy is prying Zoro for information. How was he captured? Why was he captured? Luffy wants to know if Zoro is strong enough to be on his crew, and if Zoro is just easily captured by the Marines, there's no way that he could weather the dangers of the Grand Line.
余計なお世話だ.
俺だったら3日で餓死するな、きっと。
Once again, Luffy is directly challenging Zoro. He wants to know why Zoro hasn't escaped yet if he is so strong. I mean, how can Zoro have such a reputation if he allows himself to remain captured? Luffy wants to know if Zoro is worthy of being rescued.
お前とじゃ気力が違うんだ. 俺は必ず生き延びてみせる. 絶対に.
With that statement, Luffy's interest in Zoro has grown, but he hasn't made up his mind yet. He turns to leave, but Zoro stops him.
ちょっと待て. それ、取ってくんねえか?
食うのかよ、これ。もうほとんど泥の塊だぞ。
黙って食わせろ!
あ? だから言ったろ?
うまかった。ごちそうさま。
From Luffy's smile, you can see that this act of selflessness has made a great impression on Luffy. He may not know why, but Zoro has done something incredibly kind for Rika, and that means a lot in Luffy's book. Directly afterward, Luffy tells Rika that Zoro ate both of the trampled onigiri. Now, this is a small point, but it really shows how nice Luffy can be. I mean, Luffy isn't doing this for his own benefit. He's doing it solely for Zoro and Rika. After Rika tells Luffy and Kobe the truth behind Zoro's capture, Luffy overhears Helmeppo say that he'll execute Zoro tomorrow because he's tired of waiting around. It is this remark that causes Luffy to punch out Helmeppo and make up his mind about Zoro. Now, it's fairly obvious why Luffy is angry at Helmeppo, but there are some factors here that you might not notice. First and foremost, Luffy has seen Zoro's loyalty and dedication firsthand. Zoro's kept his end of the bargain, surviving for 3 weeks without food, all to save 2 people he just met, and Helmeppo wants to trample all over this act just because he's bored. What a dick. Also, Luffy decides in that very moment to make Zoro his crewmate. He didn't decide after hearing Rika's story, and he didn't decide after seeing Zoro eat the onigiri. He decided when he saw just how much Zoro was willing to sacrifice for 2 people he didn't even know. Zoro almost died for them, and that is a big deal to Luffy. Another major point here is the fact that Helmeppo refuses to fight his own battles. He's perfectly willing to harm anyone he wants, but he calls his father when anyone opposes him. Luffy has always fought his own battles and protected the people he cared about most with his own strength, so Helmeppo's actions anger him more than you would think. Last and most important, Helmeppo is perfectly willing to kill a man just because he stood up for people who are unable to defend themselves. Rika and her mother may be very strong-willed, but they have no real way to fight back against Helmeppo and Morgan. Threatening to kill someone for defending the rights of the defenseless is simply despicable. Luffy, punch him again. Thank you. When Luffy confronts Zoro again, his mind is made up. It's important to note that he doesn't ask Zoro to join him. Luffy knows by this point that Zoro is the perfect man to be his first mate, and he won't take no for an answer. Pay specific attention to the way this conversation is worded. Zoro refuses to join Luffy because he doesn't want to become a pirate. Consider the fact that Zoro is a renowned pirate hunter. He's probably killed hundreds of pirates in his line of work and seen firsthand just how evil they can be. Luffy doesn't see it that way though. To Luffy, just being a pirate doesn't make you a bad person. The title really doesn't matter. It's what you do as a pirate that makes you good or evil. Luffy is always doing good deeds for people he doesn't even know, so he considers himself good regardless of what he is. When Zoro calls pirates scum, Luffy points out the fact that Zoro is known as an evil pirate hunter. Again, Luffy values a person's actions over their reputation. Sure, Zoro has the title of pirate hunter, but he's shown through his actions that he is a noble person, worthy of being on Luffy's crew, and that's what matters to Luffy. Now, what happens next might make Luffy look like an idiot, but there is a reason for it. If you think back to the beginning of the episode, you can clearly see that the marine base is visible from the port of the town and from the front gate of the marine base. The base is a central part of the town. Luffy may do dumb things from time to time, but he's not stupid enough to miss the giant building at the top of the island. The question remains then, why did Luffy run the wrong way? Well, the answer is quite simple. Luffy ran the wrong way on purpose. Think about it. The very next thing Luffy does is use his Gomu Gomu no rocket to launch himself to the other side of the yard. Luffy could have simply walked or ran to the other end of the yard, but he didn't. He ran the wrong way to get Zoro's attention, and then used his rocket to show Zoro that he isn't an ordinary person. Luffy wanted to get Zoro interested in being a member of his pirate crew, and showing off his Devil Fruit ability certainly did the trick. When Luffy attacks the marine base, we begin to see that Luffy isn't perfect. He destroys the statue of Captain Morgan, and while he does apologize briefly, he doesn't even think about paying for the damages. He straight up kidnaps Helmeppo to find Zoro's swords, and he uses Helmeppo as a human shield when the Marines threaten to shoot. Luffy may be a good person, but he's not a saint. He'll stand up for what he believes to be right, but he's not above using dirty tactics. We didn't really see this side of Luffy in the last episode, and it's a great development for his character. I mean, I would rather have a protagonist with flaws than someone who is just plain perfect. When Luffy sees that Kobe and Zoro are in trouble, he immediately launches himself out the window and rushes to their rescue. This scene is very reminiscent of when Luffy saved Rika earlier in the episode. He rushes to save those in need without a second thought, he arrives just in time to save the day, and he looks badass doing it. After Luffy bounces back the bullets, Zoro asks him just what the hell he is. Luffy just smiles and says that he's the man who will become the Pirate King. Rather than answer Zoro's question, he says the one thing that will get Zoro's attention most of all.
海賊王になるだと？てめえ、意味分かって言ってんのか？
海賊王は海賊王だ。他に意味があるか？
Saying that you are going to be the Pirate King is a big deal in the world of One Piece, but to Luffy it's a casual statement. He doesn't care about the odds or the impossibility of his dream. He's going to be the Pirate King, and that's that.
受け取るだろ。ここで俺と一緒に戦えば、お前は政府に立てつく悪党だ。このまま海軍に殺されるのとどっちがいい？
Here, Luffy gives Zoro a choice. Either stay and get killed by the Marines, or fight with Luffy and join his pirate crew. When Zoro agrees, Luffy is overjoyed and even does a dance to celebrate.
やったー！仲間になってくれんのかよ！よし！うひょー！最高！
分かったらさっさとこの縄をほどけ！
Luffy has a right to be happy because this is a major moment for him. Not only has Zoro become Luffy's first mate and the first person to join his crew, but Zoro has also become Luffy's Nakama. Now, you're probably saying, Zenith, what the hell does Nakama mean? Nakama is a major term in Japan that doesn't completely translate to English. Kaizoku Fansubs, the group that worked on the majority of One Piece fansubs, translated Nakama to comrade, but that's not completely right. Nakama is a word that can mean both friend, companion, and ally, but in One Piece it is used to describe friends that are more like family. Nakama are as close as blood relatives to each other and treat each other like brothers. You will hear Luffy say the term Nakama a lot throughout One Piece, so it is very important that you know the meaning of the term. During the battle against the Marines, Luffy takes all of them out with a single attack, further showcasing just how strong Luffy is. Ordinary Marines are no match for him, and he still isn't even trying. One thing I didn't really mention last arc was Luffy's attacks. Whenever Luffy uses his Devil Fruit for an attack, he shouts the attack name, much like a Super Sentai or Super Robot show. This gives the attack some more weight, and makes each attack feel a bit more epic. Thus far, Luffy has used 3 different Gomu Gomu attacks. There's Gomu Gomu no Rocket, where he launches his body at his enemies like a rocket, Gomu Gomu no Whip, where he stretches his leg and uses it as a whip, and Gomu Gomu no Pistol, where he stretches back his arm and uses the tension to increase the force of his normal punch. All of Luffy's attacks are named after real weapons or objects that Luffy has seen during his travels. One of the reasons I like Luffy so much is the fact that he doesn't just rely on punching people. He is always coming up with new and unique attacks to fight his enemies. I'll point each new attack out as this retrospective continues. For the beginning of the fight, Luffy doesn't put too much effort behind his attacks. He does enough to knock down the Marines, but that's about it. However, when Morgan orders his men to shoot themselves in the head, Luffy rushes into battle and punches Morgan as hard as he can. One of the most important things to Luffy is Nakama. He values his friends and his crewmates above all else, and he'll defend them with his life. With that said, when he sees other people treating their comrades like trash, Luffy gets pissed. This idea will come up again later on, but it is used to great effect here. During his fight with Captain Morgan, Luffy proves once again how strong he is. Luffy goes throughout the entire battle with relative ease and still doesn't break a sweat. Morgan may be strong, but Luffy is clearly leagues above him at this point. Also, this is the first time we see how fast and maneuverable Luffy can be. He's able to keep up with Morgan throughout the entire fight and dodges all of Morgan's attacks. There's even one attack that Luffy dodges in mid-air and turns into a counterattack. While the battle is pretty short, it's enjoyable, and Luffy certainly impresses with his fighting prowess. I mean, he didn't even have to use a Devil Fruit attack to take down Morgan. At the end of the fight, Luffy continues to punch Morgan in the face, berating Morgan for destroying Kobe's dreams. This is interesting to me because he doesn't condemn Morgan for trying to kill his friends. Instead, he is angrier over the fact that Morgan is a corrupt Marine and has trampled over the just profession that Kobe idolized. Luffy knows firsthand how important a dream can be to someone, and so he gets even more pissed when somebody shatters the dreams of his Nakama. When Helmeppo tries to use Kobe as a hostage, Luffy just smiles at him. He knows that Helmeppo is bluffing, and he fully believes in Kobe.
諦めろ、バカ息子。コビーの覚悟は本物だ。
Kobe is serious about protecting both his and Luffy's dreams. Helmeppo doesn't have the conviction to pull that trigger, and Luffy knows it. As Luffy punches Helmeppo, Morgan gets up and tries to attack him from behind. Luffy is aware of this, and yet he doesn't stop his attack. This is another test for Zoro. Will you protect my life, even if I don't ask you to? Zoro passes the test, taking down Morgan with a single attack. I'll talk more about this when I get to Zoro, but it is interesting that Luffy and Zoro were able to develop such a close bond so quickly. After the battle, we get to see another first for One Piece, the post-battle party. During the series, every time Luffy defeats the main villain of an arc, there is always a celebration and a feast, and Luffy is always in the middle, completely stuffing his face. I just love the fact that he's able to eat more than Zoro, who hasn't eaten in 3 weeks. When Zoro asks how many crewmates Luffy has, we begin to see how unrealistic Luffy is. Luffy has 1 crew member and a dinky little boat, and he thinks he's ready to set sail for the Grand Line.
あれか。
今にこんなでっかい船を手に入れるさ。
どうやって？
あと、海賊機も欲しいな。いやかっこいい
A while later, when the Marines ask Luffy and Zoro to leave town, Luffy smiles once again. Luffy doesn't mind leaving. He knows that he can't stay there forever, and being forced to leave town is all part of being a pirate. This will certainly not be the last time Luffy is forced to leave town. Now, I talked a lot about the next scene in my recap video, but it bears repeating. This scene is just plain awesome. Luffy puts on an act and gets Kobe mad enough to punch him so that Kobe won't be associated with pirates. While Luffy doesn't call him a Nakama, he considers Kobe a friend, and he goes to incredible lengths so that Kobe is able to realize his dream of being a Marine. Like I said, just plain awesome. And so Luffy sets sail, telling Kobe that they'll meet again someday. Out on the open sea once again, Luffy gets himself psyched for a new adventure and gives us some foreshadowing of his backstory. As I said before, Luffy is quite static in this arc, but we learn so much about him in just these 2 episodes. It may seem like a lot to take in, but it is paced incredibly well, and a lot of it is very subtle. Luffy is the main character of the story, and so he gets the most development, but the secondary characters also get a lot of focus. Next time, I'll take a look at the rest of these characters and delve into their individual story arcs. I'm Zenith Rule, and thank you guys very much for watching. See you next time.
"熱に浮かされ 誇りかぶってた宝の地図も確かめたのなら伝説じゃない
Space Monkey Mafia Studios.
Listen, Zenith. Never forget. Just believe in yourself. Not in the Zenith that I believe in. Not in the Kamina that you believe in. Have faith in the Zenith that believes in you.